The Horizon, a high-tech spaceship, sailed silently through the vastness of space. It was on a routine mission, exploring new planets in an uncharted region of the galaxy. Captain Lena stood by the control panel, glancing at the stars outside the window. The crew was relaxed, unaware of the strange event about to unfold. The day was calm, just like any other day in space travel. But then, the silence was shattered by an unexpected beep from the communication system. "Captain, you should see this," came the voice of Lieutenant Mark, the communications officer. Lena walked over to his station, where a strange signal blinked on the screen. It wasn't a typical transmission. There was something off about it. "Is this an error?" Lena asked, narrowing her eyes. The signal seemed like a glitch, random patterns of static and short bursts of data. "I don't think so, Captain," Mark replied, frowning. "It's coming from a distant part of the galaxy, but the source location is unclear. It could be an old distress signal, or something else." Lena considered the possibilities. A distress signal? It was unusual to receive one from so far away. Their mission wasn't supposed to involve rescuing stranded ships, and they weren't even close to any known inhabited planets. "It's probably a mistake, some glitch in the system," she said, but there was a slight hesitation in her voice. "Check the system again, Lieutenant." Mark ran a diagnostic, but everything seemed fine. The signal persisted, flickering on the screen. It became clearer, almost as if it was trying to tell them something. "Captain, this is strange," Mark said after a moment. "I think it's repeating a set of coordinates." Lena stared at the coordinates on the screen. It was a pattern, like a map leading somewhere specific. But where? She had no idea. The crew was trained to investigate anomalies, but this was different. There was no explanation for this strange signal. "Plot the course," Lena ordered, trying to remain calm. "Are we really going after this, Captain?" Mark asked, sounding doubtful. Lena hesitated. "Yes, I think we need to check it out. If it's a distress call, we have to find out what's going on." As they changed course, the atmosphere on the ship became tense. The crew went back to their stations, their eyes occasionally flicking to the strange signal still flashing on the control panel. Lena couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Why had they received this signal? Was it really just an error? The signal became stronger as they got closer to the coordinates. The crew worked in silence, glancing at each other, exchanging nervous glances. The ship began to approach a planet they had never seen before. It was small, dark, and almost looked uninhabited. There was no sign of life, no ships in orbit, nothing that could explain the signal. "Prepare to land," Lena commanded. The landing process was smooth, but as the ship touched down on the surface, an eerie quiet filled the air. The ground was covered with what appeared to be ancient ruins, strange structures that looked like they had been built by a civilization long forgotten. It was as though they had stepped into a ghostly world where time had stopped. "Is there anyone here?" Lena whispered, mostly to herself. The crew disembarked, scanning their surroundings. The ruins were silent, the air still. No signs of life, no sounds. The only thing they could hear was their own footsteps echoing off the empty stone structures. Lena's heart began to race. This wasn't a place where anyone lived anymore. The planet was abandoned, yet the signal had led them here. Why? They ventured deeper into the ruins, unsure of what they might find. The place felt like a tomb, abandoned by whatever civilization had once lived there. But then, as they reached the heart of the ruins, they saw something. A large underground entrance, hidden beneath layers of dust and debris. The door seemed to beckon them. "Should we go in?" Mark asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. Lena looked at the dark, mysterious door. The strange signal had led them here. There was no turning back now. "Yes, we go in," she said firmly. "Let's find out what's behind this." With that, they entered the underground facility, unaware that this was only the beginning of a much larger mystery. The signal was no mistake. It was a message that would change everything. The suspense was thick in the air as they descended into the darkness. What would they find inside? Was this the end of their journey, or the start of something far more dangerous than they could have ever imagined? The crew had no answers yet, but one thing was certain: they were about to uncover something that would shock them to their core. As the crew of the Horizon stepped deeper into the underground facility, the air grew cold. The walls were made of dark stone, unlike anything they had seen before, as though they had been built by a civilization long lost to time. The floor beneath their boots creaked as they moved forward, their flashlights cutting through the darkness, revealing strange markings on the walls. Symbols and signs that didn't belong to any known language. Captain Lena walked ahead, her mind racing. Why had the signal led them here? What was the purpose of this place? She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. It was too quiet, too still. The tension in the air was palpable. Mark, the communications officer, led the way as they navigated through the winding corridors. "Captain, the signal is still here. It's stronger now, but it's almost as if it's guiding us." Lena nodded. "Keep following it. Something doesn't feel right. Be on guard." The deeper they ventured into the facility, the more it seemed like they were walking through the ruins of a forgotten world. The walls were etched with ancient patterns, some of them glowing faintly as if infused with some strange, unknown energy. The floor was littered with dust, but occasionally, they would find metallic objects half buried in the ground, like relics of a time far beyond their own. Eventually, they came to a large chamber. At the center of the room stood a massive device, covered in intricate machinery and glowing lines. The hum of energy filled the air, and the signal they had been following was now deafening, echoing in their minds. "This is it," Lena said softly, staring at the machine in awe. "The source of the signal." Mark stepped forward cautiously, examining the device. "It looks like some kind of transmitter, but it's not like anything we've seen before. This technology, it's ancient." The rest of the crew gathered around, equally mesmerized by the sight before them. The device was enormous, reaching up to the ceiling of the chamber. Its surface was covered in layers of dust and debris, but the strange symbols that covered its surface seemed to pulse with an otherworldly light. "It's almost like it's waiting for something," said Sarah, the ship's engineer, as she ran her fingers over the symbols. "Could this be some sort of automated system?" Lena considered Sarah's words. "Maybe, but if it was automated, why hasn't it activated on its own? Why did it need us?" Just as Lena was about to step closer to investigate, the lights in the room flickered, and the ground beneath them trembled slightly. The crew froze, looking around in confusion. Then, a voice echoed through the chamber, startling them all. It was robotic, yet carried an unmistakable tone of urgency. "Humanity has arrived." The voice sent a chill down their spines. Lena instinctively took a step back. "What is this?" she whispered, almost to herself. The voice continued, "I am the last remnant of a once great civilization. You are not in error. You are the chosen ones." The crew exchanged uncertain glances. "Chosen ones?" Mark repeated. "What does that mean?" The voice seemed to respond directly to his question. "Humanity's arrival was foretold. You have come to awaken the legacy of your ancestors. You are here to fulfill a destiny far greater than you understand." Lena felt a wave of disbelief wash over her. "What destiny? What are you talking about?" The voice paused before answering. "This world, this galaxy, it is dying. Your ancestors knew it would come to this. You, the last descendants of Earth, hold the key to saving all life." For a moment, there was silence. The crew was stunned by the weight of the revelation. Their mission had been to explore, to discover, but nothing had prepared them for this. They had thought they were simply investigating a signal, a glitch in the system, but this was much more than that. This was a message, a calling. "We have the key." Lena repeated in disbelief. "Yes," the voice responded. "But to unlock it, one must sacrifice all. A price must be paid." Lena's heart raced. She had never imagined this kind of responsibility. She looked around at her crew, who were equally shocked by the turn of events. "What kind of price?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. The voice was quiet for a moment before responding, "The sacrifice of one who carries the blood of Earth." The tension in the room grew unbearable. "One of us?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The voice confirmed, "Only one. And only then will the network be activated. The network that can save this galaxy. But the cost is life." The crew stood in stunned silence. The weight of the choice pressed down on them. Someone would have to die to save the galaxy. Lena felt the burden of it all, the lives of billions resting on the shoulders of one person. Could they really make such a choice? The voice spoke again, breaking the silence. "It is the way of things. It is the price of salvation." Lena looked at the machine in front of her, her mind racing. Could they really do this? Could she allow one of her crew members to sacrifice their life for something they barely understood? And who would it be? She turned to the crew, her heart heavy with the decision that lay ahead. "We need to understand more," she said finally, her voice firm. "We need to know everything about this device before we make any decisions." But even as she spoke, Lena couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. The galaxy's future hung in the balance, and they were standing at the edge of a decision that could either save it, or doom it forever. The crew was about to learn just how far they were willing to go for the survival of all life. The atmosphere inside the ancient underground facility was heavy with tension as Captain Lena and her crew stood before the immense, mysterious machine. The voice had just revealed the unimaginable. The fate of the galaxy rested on a sacrifice, one that had to come from a descendant of Earth. Lena's mind raced. She had always been a leader, making tough decisions, but this was beyond anything she could have ever imagined. The weight of what they had uncovered felt like a physical burden on her chest. One person would have to die to activate the network that could save the galaxy. "We need to gather more information," Lena said firmly, though her voice was tinged with uncertainty. "We can't make a decision like this without understanding what we're dealing with." The crew nodded silently, their eyes shifting between the machine and each other. Mark, the communications officer, was still trying to process the magnitude of the situation. He had always been the logical one, and yet even he couldn't explain what had just happened. "There has to be more to this," Mark muttered, tapping furiously at his console. "This machine, it's connected to a network that spans the entire galaxy, and it's been waiting for us. But why? What makes us the ones to activate it?" Lena stepped forward, her gaze fixed on the machine. It pulsed with an eerie energy, as if it was alive. She could feel its power, raw, untapped, and waiting. It was the key to everything. But the price was unimaginable. As she reached out to touch the console, a sudden surge of energy shot through the room, making the walls vibrate. The floor beneath them seemed to hum with a strange, almost sentient power. The voice returned, this time clearer, almost like a whisper in the back of their minds. "You are not the first to come," the voice intoned, sending chills down Lena's spine. "This machine was built long ago, by those who came before you. Their purpose was to create a safeguard, a means to ensure that when the galaxy was on the brink of destruction, humanity would be called upon." Lena's breath caught in her throat. Humanity was chosen. "But we're just." "Not just," the voice interrupted gently. "You are the last hope. Earth's descendants were meant to inherit the key, to unlock the power of the network. You see, this is no ordinary machine. It is a remnant of an ancient civilization, one that perished long ago. Their creators were the ones who seeded humanity across the stars. You, Captain Lena, are the legacy of that long-forgotten empire." Lena stood frozen, her mind struggling to comprehend the enormity of the revelation. Her hands trembled as she withdrew from the machine, looking around at her crew. They too seemed lost, as if the weight of the truth was too much to bear. But why us? Lena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Why now? Why is humanity the chosen species to save the galaxy? The voice responded, its tone tinged with sadness. Because you are more than just survivors. You are the inheritors of the galaxy's first gift. Your ancestors were once part of a great federation of species, the architects of the galactic web. But their downfall came when their power became corrupted, when they lost sight of what mattered most. The galaxy fell into chaos, and now it is dying. The network exists to restore balance, but it can only be activated by the bloodline of the first creators, the humans. The truth hit them like a wave. Lena felt dizzy, as if the ground beneath her was shifting. The civilization that had created humanity, the very people who had seeded their ancestors across the stars, had known that one day their creations would be called upon to save the galaxy. It was a fate sealed long before they had even been born. We were never meant to be alone, Lena murmured, her eyes wide with realization. The people who made us, they intended for us to find this. The voice responded, yes. You are not just a species. You are the key to restoring balance. But the cost, as you have learned, is high. Lena turned away from the machine, feeling the weight of her crew's eyes upon her. They were all in this together, but the burden of leadership had never felt more isolating. She knew that whatever decision they made here would echo across the galaxy. The fate of billions rested on their choice. There has to be another way, Sarah, the engineer, said quietly, her voice trembling. There has to be a way to save the galaxy without someone having to die. Lena shook her head slowly. I wish there were. But we have to face the truth. This is what was foretold. Humanity, our people, we were always meant to be the last hope. Just then, the machine's hum grew louder, and the voice returned with a new urgency. The network will not wait forever. The galaxy decays. It needs the energy that only one of your bloodline can provide. The price must be paid. The room fell into silence once again, the heavy weight of the decision pressing down on each of them. Lena could feel the eyes of her crew on her. They were waiting for her to lead, to make the impossible decision. But how could she choose? How could anyone choose who would give their life for the galaxy? We need more time, Lena said softly. I don't know who can make this sacrifice. But we must be certain. The crew nodded, their faces grim but resolute. They had no answers yet, but they all understood one thing, whatever happened next, the fate of the galaxy rested in their hands. The legacy of humanity, and the survival of the stars, would be decided in the next moments. But for now, all they could do was wait, their hearts heavy with the knowledge that the greatest choice of their lives loomed before them. The underground chamber was thick with tension. The voice from the machine still echoed in their minds, the words it had spoken hanging in the air like a heavy fog. The crew of the Horizon stood in a circle, unsure of how to move forward. They had uncovered the truth, and now they were faced with an impossible decision. One of them would have to sacrifice their life to activate the network that could save the galaxy. Captain Lena stared at the glowing console, her thoughts racing. The responsibility felt unbearable. The machine was silent now, but its hum lingered in the background, a reminder of the choice that loomed over them. Time was running out. The galaxy was dying. The power that could save it lay in their hands, but it would come at a price, one life. I don't know who could do this, Lena said quietly, her voice trembling despite her best efforts to remain calm. Her mind flashed back to Earth, to the generations that had come before them, to the legacy of humanity that had led them to this moment. But this was not something they had been prepared for. How could anyone be? Mark, the communications officer, was the first to speak. We can't just stand here and wait for the galaxy to fall apart. We have to act. The voice said that the network would restore balance, that it could save everything. But it needs one of us. His voice trailed off as he looked around at the crew. Lena's eyes met his, and she could see the uncertainty in his gaze. There was no easy way out. Maybe we can find another solution, Sarah, the ship's engineer, suggested, her voice sharp with urgency. She was always the practical one, the one who believed there was a way to fix things, no matter how impossible. There must be some other way to use this machine, to activate the network without sacrificing one of us. Lena looked at Sarah, but deep down, she knew there was no other way. The voice had been clear. One of them had to die. There was no room for debate. What if it's me? Sarah continued, her eyes locking with Lena's. I'm the engineer. I'm the one who knows this kind of technology. Maybe I'm the one who should. No, Lena interrupted, her voice stronger than she felt. I can't ask that of you. The crew fell into silence. Each of them seemed lost in their own thoughts, wrestling with the burden of what they had to do. Lena's heart weighed heavily in her chest. How could she possibly choose? It wasn't just about the sacrifice. It was about the lives that would be affected by that decision. They all had families, loved ones, people who depended on them. What would happen to them if one of them didn't return? Captain, Mark said after a long pause, breaking the silence. We can't keep waiting. The galaxy is dying. The machine won't wait for us to figure this out. We have to make a decision. Lena closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She had always been a leader, but this was different. She had never been faced with a choice so enormous, so final. She was supposed to protect her crew, to keep them safe. And yet now, she was the one who had to choose who would give their life for the greater good. I won't make you decide, Lena said quietly, her voice steady now, though her heart was in turmoil. We all signed up for this mission together. And now, we all face this choice together. No one is going to make this sacrifice alone. The crew looked at each other, their faces solemn but resolute. They were all in this together. But that didn't make the decision any easier. Let's take a moment, Lena said, her voice cracking slightly. We need to think about this. We need to be sure. The room fell silent again, the weight of the decision pressing down on all of them. Time was slipping away, and yet, they all knew they couldn't rush this. It wasn't just about the galaxy, it was about their lives, their futures. They couldn't choose hastily. After a long moment, Sarah spoke up again. What if we each volunteer? We could all choose, one by one. That way, the decision isn't left to just one person. We all face it together. Lena shook her head. No. We can't do that. The voice said the sacrifice has to come from the bloodline of Earth. This isn't something any of us can choose without understanding the consequences. Mark stepped forward, his eyes narrowed in thought. Maybe we could each offer something. If there's more than one way to activate this network, maybe it won't be just one person who has to sacrifice themselves. But deep down, Lena knew there was no escaping the truth. The network required the ultimate price, one life to ensure the survival of the galaxy. And in the end, it would come down to one of them stepping forward to make that choice. I'll do it, Sarah said suddenly, breaking the silence. The room turned toward her in shock. Lena's heart skipped a beat. No, Sarah. You can't. I know what you're thinking, Captain, Sarah said quietly. But I'm the engineer. I understand this technology better than anyone. I'm the one who can activate the network. Lena stared at her, her mind racing. Sarah was right. She was the one who understood the machine, who knew how to make it work. And yet, the thought of losing her was unbearable. They were all family now. Sarah, Lena said softly, her voice shaking, there has to be another way. But Sarah only smiled, a sad smile that didn't reach her eyes. This is the only way, Lena. I've made my peace with it. Lena closed her eyes, her throat tight with emotion. She didn't want to lose anyone, not Sarah, not any of them. But in the end, it seemed like the only choice. With a heavy heart, Lena stepped forward. Then we do this together. We honor Sarah's decision, but we all bear the weight of it. As the crew stood together in that dark, forgotten chamber, they knew that their choice would echo throughout the galaxy. The fate of everything, of humanity, of the stars, of the future itself, rested on the decision they had just made. And Sarah, their brave engineer, would be the one to take the first step toward saving them all. The air in the chamber was thick with a mixture of sorrow and determination. The crew of the Horizon had made their choice. Sarah, the ship's engineer, had stepped forward, volunteering to make the ultimate sacrifice to activate the network that would save the galaxy. The weight of the decision hung heavy in the room, yet there was a sense of finality about it. The choice had been made, and there was no turning back. Captain Lena stood at the edge of the machine, watching Sarah approach the massive device with a look of quiet resolve. The glow of the console bathed the room in an eerie light, casting long shadows against the walls. The hum of energy had returned, louder now, as if the machine itself was alive, waiting for the moment to begin. It felt as though the very walls were holding their breath in anticipation. "I'm ready," Sarah said softly, her voice steady but tinged with a trace of sadness. "I've made my peace with it." Lena stepped forward, her heart heavy with grief. She had always admired Sarah's courage, but standing here, facing this moment, the reality of it felt like an unbearable weight. "You don't have to do this, Sarah," she said quietly. "We'll figure out another way. There has to be another choice." Sarah gave a small smile, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Lena, this is the only way. I've known that from the moment we arrived here. This is why we're here, to make sure the galaxy doesn't fall apart. It's my duty, and my honor." Lena swallowed the lump in her throat, trying to find the right words, but there was nothing she could say. Sarah had made her decision. And as her captain, it was her responsibility to stand by it. The rest of the crew stood in silence, their faces filled with a mixture of sorrow, admiration, and disbelief. They had all shared this journey, this mission. But none of them could have ever predicted the path they would walk, or the price that would be paid for the galaxy's survival. Sarah turned to face the machine, her hand gently brushing the console. The glowing symbols seemed to pulse, as if responding to her touch. The machine hummed louder, the energy building in intensity. A deep, resonating voice suddenly filled the room, the same voice that had guided them to this point. "You have chosen," the voice intoned. "The sacrifice is accepted. The network will be activated. The galaxy will be saved." Sarah took a deep breath, her eyes closing for a moment as she steeled herself for what was to come. She looked back at her crew, her friends. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice cracking. "For everything. I'll see you on the other side." Lena nodded, unable to speak, her eyes filled with unshed tears. She had known Sarah for years, since before the mission had even begun. Sarah had always been the one to fix everything, to find a solution when it seemed impossible. And now, she was the one who would give everything to save them all. With a final glance at her captain and the crew, Sarah stepped closer to the machine. The energy surged around her, the hum of the device now almost deafening. Her body was bathed in the light from the console, her hands trembling slightly as she positioned herself at the center of the device. The machine responded, its glow intensifying as if it were absorbing her energy. "No," Mark suddenly shouted, his voice filled with panic. He took a step forward, reaching out as though to stop her. "Sarah, don't do this. There has to be another way. We can't lose you." Sarah turned to look at him, her face filled with calm acceptance. "It's the only way, Mark. You know it, too." She smiled softly. "I'm ready. I trust all of you to carry on, to make sure humanity never forgets this moment." Tears welled up in Mark's eyes, but he didn't move. There was no turning back now. This was their reality. The machine's hum grew louder, and Sarah's body began to glow, the energy from the device now fully coursing through her. The crew stood in stunned silence, watching as their friend, their colleague, became the conduit for the galaxy's salvation. The air around them seemed to crackle with power, the very atmosphere charged with the energy of the machine. It felt as though time itself had stopped, holding its breath as the moment drew near. Suddenly, the machine released a blinding pulse of light, engulfing Sarah completely. The room shook violently, and the crew was forced to shield their eyes from the overwhelming brilliance. The energy surged throughout the facility, and the ground beneath them trembled as the network activated. Then, just as quickly as it had begun, the light faded, and the room fell into an eerie silence. Lena slowly lowered her arm from her face, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. When she looked toward the center of the room, she saw Sarah, standing motionless, her eyes closed, her body surrounded by a soft, shimmering glow. It was as though the energy of the entire galaxy had been channeled through her. But she was no longer with them. Sarah had given herself to the machine, her sacrifice now complete. The voice from the machine returned, softer this time, almost reverent. The network is activated. The galaxy is saved. The legacy of humanity will never fade. Lena felt her knees buckle as the weight of the moment hit her. She collapsed to the floor, her heart breaking as she looked at Sarah's still form. Her crew members slowly gathered around her, their faces etched with grief, but also with the knowledge that the galaxy had been saved. The price had been paid. But Sarah was gone. The one person who had always been there, who had helped them all, was gone forever. "We'll never forget you, Sarah," Lena whispered, her voice breaking. "You saved us all. You saved the galaxy." As the crew stood together in the silence of the chamber, they knew that the galaxy had been given a second chance. But it had come at an unimaginable cost. And in the quiet aftermath, the crew vowed to honor Sarah's sacrifice, to ensure that humanity's legacy would live on, in a galaxy now filled with hope.